Welcome back to interpreting the scares!
That's not right. This isn't a part of interpreting the scares. The entire month has already been done. I've already recorded everything. It's set, it's scheduled. But because it is October, obviously, some horror films are bound to be released, including, obviously, we had Hocus Pocus 2, which I haven't seen yet. We have Jeepers Creepers Reborn. In a little bit, we're gonna have the next Hellraiser film and the next Halloween movie. So as I watch those films, I will include them as kind of a special or an extra this month when it comes down to interpreting the scares, but it's not part of the theme that I had going for this month. So just keep that in mind, because today we are talking about Jeepers Creepers Reborn. Jeepers Creepers Reborn is a 2022 horror film that takes place in the same franchise of the Jeepers Creepers saga, now I guess you can call it, but it's also kind of a reboot, if you will, or a reimagining, or a spin-off, or whatever, because this one's actually meta. It takes place in the real world where the other Jeepers Creepers movies already exist, and we got a group of people that are heading towards a horror movie convention. And of course, the Creeper is there to wreak havoc like he always does every 23 years. And one of the girls that's in the group is also kind of having a little bit of some premonitions. She's having some visions of the future and what it means to her, because it turns out she's kind of pregnant, and the Creeper is very interested in this pregnancy for whatever reason that's never explained. My relationship with the Jeepers Creepers films, you know, it's touch and go. I only really started watching this series probably a couple years ago, because I knew even though it wasn't as popular as other horror franchises, it was still popular enough that people recognize the name, and obviously they keep making sequels to it. In general, I think the idea is fine, but it was never something that they dove into enough for me to care that much for any of the characters, including the Creeper. I remember the first movie the most, not just because it's the first movie, but because it made more of an impact all around. It also had people in the movie like Justin Long, so that was interesting. The second movie, I kind of remember there's like a bus, there's like a barn, but other than that, I couldn't really tell you much about. I don't even remember the third movie. I saw it, but I don't remember anything about it. And my guess is when it comes down to this fourth film in the saga, I probably won't be remembering much about it either, other than the general idea or gimmick, I should say, that it is meta, that it takes place in our real world, where the Jeepers Creepers thing was actually a trilogy of movies. That's true in this movie. I found that to be really fascinating, you know, because the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, this is their version of New Nightmare, where, you know, in that you got Freddy Krueger, who was truly based off of Wes Craven's nightmares, and he just kind of wrote it down and made a movie about it. And so it was kind of based on reality, and I like the idea of what they were going for in that movie. This is something that's a lot closer, and I gotta thank my friend Jake for pointing this out. It's a lot closer to the Hellraiser Hellworld film, because that was the meta film in that universe. And not only that, but in Hellworld there was also a convention where the creatures show up and wreak havoc there too. So plot-wise, they're very, very similar. Between the two movies, I probably prefer Hellworld, because when it comes right down to it, this movie starts off strong, in my opinion. The middle of the film is kind of, I don't know, it's got some interesting aspects to it. But the third act of the film, you know, the culminating climax, the big end fight or whatever, that's what dipped for me. That's what got really, really tedious and boring and annoying, and for whatever reason, I was distracted. I looked away, I was doing other things, I was like, oh, they're still fighting them in this haunted house thing, that's cool. And I just kind of got going, because it was repetitive, and I kind of understood where it was gonna go, because nothing new was happening. Story-wise, it starts off strong with a gimmick, and they just didn't follow through with that gimmick. The convention itself was cool, because we got to see a bunch of people in costume of a bunch of different horror films. So we saw people in Michael Myers masks, we saw Freddy Krueger stuff, we got Beetlejuice costumes, we got a bunch of stuff that was really, really interesting to see in this convention. One of the problems with the movie, however, is that it introduces kind of a storyline with this main girl in the film who's pregnant, and it never once follows through with it. It never explains why the creeper is so focused in on her. I mean, there's an idea there, like if he consumes this baby, he becomes immortal or whatever, but why that baby? You know, what makes her so special? And why has this never happened in the past? What does this have to do with anything? Now what's gonna happen? By the end of the film, something happens that's not explained whatsoever. Maybe in order to have a cliffhanger for, you know, more movies, another trilogy of sorts, but you need to explain something, because I think everybody who watches this is gonna be like, I don't get it! Some of the kills were interesting, some of the characters I kind of liked, but overall, I found the movie to be kind of meh, at best. I can't forget to point out also that the visuals were crap. I mean, they were really, really bad. It felt like they were on set, but not any regular set. It felt like they were on a set that was literally covered in green screen. Everything they walk around is like computer generated green screen thing. Like I do my reviews green screen. This stuff is not actually there, obviously, but I'm also not a movie, you know? So I could tell when they had these green screen issues, especially when it got really, really wide and we could see further out and we got to see these people walk into the background, around the corner and stuff like that. It looked bad. It looked fake. Like it just didn't look natural, because green screen isn't an end-all solution. And it's not like I'm disappointed, you know, it's not like a series that I'm really invested in and that I love to death and whatever. It's always been something that I was just like, oh, there's another movie of that, sure, I'll put it on, why not? And I don't love any of them, you know, I just remember the first one the most. And I like that the beginning of this movie started off basically remaking the first film in terms of introducing you to the creeper as a form of unsolved mysteries. I thought that that was really, really cool. But again, it was a gimmick. It was a gimmick that was abandoned. Because it was meta, they could have done the New Nightmare thing where the look of the creeper and what he does and whatever could have been a lot more realistic, could have been a lot more grounded. Heck, the creeper, because he's an urban legend in this universe, it could have been something that wasn't paranormal. It could have actually just been like a person. But obviously that would have been kind of pushing it and everybody would hate it. But hey, everybody already hates it, so what's it to ya? I did not rate this movie an F. I will tell you that right off the bat, but I didn't score it that much higher. But it's all relative, because it completely depends on how you rate movies, because the number score for you would probably be an F, but for me, it's not. It's a D- letter grade. As you can see, my final overall score is 43%, and for a lot of you, 43% is worse than an F, but on my letter grading system, I'm a little bit more lenient, which means I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. I think some things in this movie are interesting, especially when it comes down to the meta angle. Somewhere in there, somewhere, it had promise. It had potential. It just didn't follow through. There's actually a lot of this movie that I rated things neither good or bad, just right down the middle, because that's exactly what it was. For instance, the acting. I can't say that the acting's bad. It just wasn't great. It was 100% forgettable, and that's it. That's straight down the line. And technically, it does follow a narrative structure that technically is pretty standard, pretty typical. However, it is a little bit boring and not as engaging as it should have been, but it does follow that narrative, and that's a technicality. There's a lot of these little technicalities in my score that kept it kind of afloat and not failing. Like, they made safe decisions in this film. They definitely weren't going to try to risk much, because obviously the series as a whole has not gotten a lot of love, and if I were to make another movie in the Jeepers Creepers universe, I would either risk it all because what's there to lose, or I would be incredibly safe in order to not piss off every other fan of the franchise that there is, which is apparently what our director did for this one. But yeah, what they need to do with the series is to make a giant risk. Change it up, you know, start from scratch and make it something that's not like the others. Make it its own thing, but obviously that's risk. It's a risk that you're gonna have to take in order for the series to actually be good again. But I wouldn't say that it's the worst movie of the year. I wouldn't say it's the worst horror film of the year. It's not great by any means, but you know, you guys have to open your eyes a little bit. You have to open your horizons a little bit. There's a lot of bad movies out there every single year that you don't even know exist. This is just one of those titles that everybody has at least heard of. And if you're ranking things based off of movies that people have heard of, I guess, you know, sure, but open up your horizons a little bit. Alright guys, have you seen Jeepers Creepers Reborn? And if you have, please let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out!